You'll see my flies tied with a multitude of bead chain eyes, lead eyes, small lead eyes, brass eyes, no eyes. With carp flies, a lot of the time it's just having the same fly in varied weights. The fish can be very spooky, so you don't want to plop. This one's got the small painted lead eyes, which will still land with quite a splash. So you want to fish this fly in 3-4 feet of water. If you're having to cast right on top of them, this might not be the eyes, and you might want to put, just bead chain, small bead chain or something on there. But play with it, play with your weights, and have a varied amount of weights. So I'm gonna drop this one out. We're gonna get started. So for my hook, I like a short shanked, kind of like an octopus hook. This is actually a Raven octopus hook. Guys use it for center pinning. I do like it because it's super strong. I don't like messing around with carp on lighter hooks just because they tend to be quite big where I target them. It's nothing to hook into 20 pounders. That's pretty common with shots with fish over 30 pounds, no problem. So you want to make sure you got a stout hook because they're gonna take line, but you will at times need to turn them and put a little power on them. And I've straightened out lesser hooks many times. So every hook I'm going to tie on today is like a 3X or 4X heavy kind of wire gauge. So I'm going to start off with just some black 6/0 thread, nothing too fancy. Actually, I'm going to give a little space, probably start about mid shank, wrap over your thread down around the bend a little bit. That's going to allow the chenille to prop up when it's sitting on the bottom. I left the gap at the front there just so that we can build up a nice little thread dam for the eyes. So I'll put a dam behind and a dam in front, and you put the eyes in between that locks them in so they don't spin on you. Your first material is going to be like this is the cerise, San Juan worm chenille. What do you call the extra small? There's like a term for it.
The ultra chenille.
Ultra chenille. Thank you. I almost said rayon, but that's not right. But yeah, so it's a really good pliable material. What I like to do with it, because it's quite rigid, like I should put it in the camera right now. If you like work it in your fingers a little bit, and you can like break it down a little bit, like the memory in it, it'll help it wobble a bit more underwater when it's down there. Just break it down, it comes into a little ball, and then like stretch it out. Now it's going to be a little bit softer, and it's going to have a little bit more movement, especially once it gets wet for the first time. First thing I like to do is just take a little lighter, just singe the end just a little bit, just so now it won't unravel on you. Although this stuff seems pretty good without having to singe it, I still like to just to make sure. I want the tail to be about, let's say, almost 2 times the shank length, roughly 1.5. We're going to wrap that in on top of the shank, a couple nice turns, and then just walk it down around the bend, but making sure to leave lots of bend for your hooked fish, and walk it back up to the top. Trim that short. Get in front of it, and this is where I'm going to create those thread dams. This is kind of what I guess I found it useful when I was tying clousers a lot. So you kind of build up a little ball of thread right about there, not too big, but just enough, and then create a little gap, and then another ball of thread, but not as big, I find, just a little pump. There you go. And then I'm just using the small solid black eyes. I find most of my carp flies, they don't involve a lot of flash. I don't think you need a flashy fly for them. Opaque colors tend to do well for me. With the exception of bead chain, I often use silver bead chain, but like that's just the standard color that it comes in. So then you place that in between the 2 humps, and you start your crisscross figure 8 wraps. Just loose to start. And then I'm going to go around the bottom of them, just kind of almost like parachute style a few times, just to really pull everything together, test the rigidity. No, a couple more. And I am tying in front of my camera, so it might bump the camera every once in a while. I apologize if it moves. That's pretty good. You're now going to get all the way back down to the base. And that's why I love this fly so much, and why it's the first one to go on, because it's really just 3 materials. We're now going to use some, it's like the peacock black ice dub. Got a little bit of like green in it. I find works well. I think the traditional called for peacock hurl, actually. But peacock hurl tends to be pretty brittle. You can counterwrap it with with copper wire or tippet, or you can use super glue, CA glue, whatever, on your thread. I don't like a lot of glues on my carp flies. I once read that they can smell like the head cement. Now, not sure how true it is, but the minute I stopped using it, I feel like I started catching more. Now that might have just been me getting a better presentation, but ever since then, I haven't really messed around. Once I dubbed the thread into a fairly simple noodle, I'm just wrapping it up. Missed a couple spots, so that's okay. And just a nice, no real taper, just a nice level black body. The final material is going to be like a soft grizzly hackle. I actually ran out of grizzly hen saddle, but if you look on your like rooster capes and stuff, this is just a bugger pack. Often at the back and like near the sides, almost there's like softer, webbier hackles instead of the stiff hackles. By the way, these things are like wicked. There's so many feathers in them for what you get, and like everyone's like, oh, they're for buggers, right? So you got like these like size 8 and 6 feathers, but it always comes with 2 pieces, and the other piece is often a lot smaller. So like you can tie down to like pretty small. Those are like size 14, maybe 16. So if you're dry fly tire too, like those work great. And for $30, like you can't beat it, or whatever it is, $40, like it's a great deal. So what I like to do with this is I'm going to tie it in kind of tip first. I'm going to pull the fibers back here, and then tie in the gap right behind the lead eyes, just a couple loose turns, and then pull tight. I'm just going to snip off that guy there. Clean it all up at the end here. I think I actually might need a couple more. There we go. And then, oh, I forgot. I usually trim the webby fibers off just to make tying it in. And of course, I forgot my hackle pliers, but that's okay. It's a pretty big feather, except for tying around the camera and everything makes it actually quite challenging now that I'm doing it. Wow, okay, let's try that again.
It's a good test for you. Do you?
Yeah, it's weird. It's like bear hugging someone and trying to tie a fly.
Exactly. Do you mess around much with different color combos? I know the original is more of like red tail and peacock.
I do a lot better with pink. I don't know why. This pink and this black peacock dubbing is wicked for me. So it's just I should say it's just 3 turns here. How am I gonna do this now? I'm gonna go pull some material. There we go. That is not fancy, but we do what we got to do. Yeah, the original is definitely the red ultra chenille, but pink works great for me. Red works great. I've caught them on brown. I've caught them on the, actually another great one in the chenille is the shell pink, I believe it's called. It's like a light pinky tan. It works really good. But play with them, play with the colors. You know, that's really the fly there. This, if you've been out with me, you'll recognize it. I mean, it's probably the first fly we throw 90% of the time. Throw a little whip finish in there. And then I do a double whip just because I'm not using head cement. So I trim it with a little bit of a tag. I find that helps it not fall apart. The cool thing about this when you tie it with ice dub is it does get a little buggy looking on like the peacock. You catch a couple fish on it, it starts to, I don't know, almost work better. If you want to, you can brush it out or pick it out before you start. But it's a deadly fly, and the whole goal is that the fly will actually ride hook point up. So it's going to sit almost like that. The fibers in the hackle are going to prop it up in the mud. The fish aren't really going to see the hackle too much. All they're going to see is this pink worm in the contrast. So zebra mussel is black with white stripes. So the black represents that, although